Was $300,000 a month not enough? My grandmother asked that from the hospital doorway while I was still wearing the same faded gray sweatshirt I had slept in for 2 nights, holding my newborn daughter against my chest. For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard her. The room smelled like antiseptic, warm plastic, and that sweet, heavy milk scent that belongs only to babies who have barely been in the world. My daughter Lila was asleep on me, with one tiny fist tucked under her chin. There was a folded hospital bill on the side table because I had already checked it 3 times, and every time I did, my heart started pounding harder. My grandmother, Evelyn Whitmore, did not look at the bassinet first. She looked at me, at my sweatshirt, at the cheap overnight bag by the chair, at the way I had shoved the billing envelope under a magazine as if hiding paper could hide money. Then she asked again, slower. Was $300,000 a month not enough? My throat felt dry. I had not slept properly in 2 days. My body still felt bruised and unfamiliar. I was too exhausted to pretend I understood what she meant. Grandma, what are you talking about? She stepped farther into the room, her face going very still. That was always worse than anger. Anger was fast. Stillness meant she was already building a case. I have wired $300,000 on the first business day of every month since your wedding, she said. I assumed you were choosing to live simply. I assumed you were building carefully. I did not assume this. I looked down at my daughter, then back at her, and said the only true thing in the room. I never received a single dollar. The world did not explode. It just shifted, quietly, permanently, and nothing fit together the same after that. My grandmother did not gasp. She did not comfort me. She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and made one call. Diane, she said when the line connected, I need you at St. Vincent immediately. Bring everything you can get in the next hour. Then she hung up. I did not break. Not then. Shock does not always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like obedience. I just sat there with one hand on my daughter's back, trying to count. $300,000 a month, 30 months of marriage, $9 million. $9 million. And I had spent the last 4 months trimming grocery lists, turning down postpartum care, and working overnight inventory audits for a pharmacy chain twice a week while pregnant because my husband kept telling me cash flow was tight. I met Ethan Mercer at a fundraising dinner in Greenwich. He had the kind of face that made older women call him polished and younger women call him safe. He worked in private capital advisory, which meant he had rich clients, expensive suits, and a vocabulary that made money sound like weather. Timing, exposure, liquidity, cycles. Even fear sounded temporary when Ethan said it. My grandmother had not objected to him, which in our family counted as approval. She and my grandfather had built Whitmore Storage Group from nothing and turned it into a holding company with industrial properties, medical buildings, and enough quiet wealth that nobody needed to perform it. She wore ordinary-looking cashmere, drove an older Range Rover, and signed 6-figure checks with the same expression she used to order tea. So when Ethan proposed, I thought I was marrying a man who understood stability the way I did. Calm, private, solid. I see now that what I mistook for steadiness was control with a pleasant face. It started as kindness. Ethan suggested a joint household account. Easier for the mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, future baby expenses, one system, one dashboard. He said he was better at tracking timing, fees, transfers. At first, it was small things, notifications going to his phone because he was setting up autopay, password resets through his email because he had built the account, large transfers handled by him because his bank had better limits and fewer holds. Every part of it came dressed as efficiency. Then, I would ask questions, and he would answer around them. Can I see what is left after the mortgage this month? I've got it covered. Don't stress yourself with timing. Why did the card get declined at the baby store? Fraud flag. I fixed it. Use the other one. Are we actually okay? He would smile, kiss my forehead, and say, you need to stop thinking like a single person and start thinking like a married one. Cash moves differently now. That line stayed in my head for months. Cash moves differently now. By the time I was 6 months pregnant, I had already started making myself smaller. Not because Ethan demanded it. He was smarter than that. He let me arrive there myself. He let me feel grateful for less. I bought store-brand vitamins. I put back maternity clothes and kept wearing oversized shirts. I stopped ordering anything extra at restaurants. I acted like my back pain was manageable. Then I picked up overnight inventory work through a former coworker. Counting stock after closing, scanning shelves under cold lights, standing too long on swollen feet. It paid quickly. I told Ethan I had taken a little side work until things evened out. He looked impressed. "That's one of the things I admire about you," he said. "You don't fall apart when life gets tight." I remember that sentence now and feel sick. I was counting prenatal vitamins at 2 in the morning while he was maintaining appearance. That was his phrase. Appearance, presence, positioning. There were dinners that mattered, client weekends that mattered, golf outings that mattered, gifts that mattered. All of them, apparently, too strategic to question. Then my mother-in-law began arriving more often. Vivian Mercer had perfected the art of sounding gracious while saying something cruel. She would sweep into my kitchen and say, "Oh, good, you're keeping things simple," or "Pregnancy makes some women really let themselves go, but Ethan isn't shallow." She had opinions about nursery paint, stroller brands, breastfeeding, induction, whether I should work less, whether I should work more. She never yelled. She curated pressure. Packages began arriving for Ethan constantly. Shoes, watches, tailored shirts. Once, a leather weekender bag that cost more than I made in a month of night audits. He said a client gave it to him after a closing. Vivian showed up one afternoon wearing a bright new bracelet and laughed that she had found it at an estate sale. Everything had an explanation. Every explanation was just clean enough to slide past suspicion. I kept telling myself marriage meant uneven seasons, that this was temporary. That adult partnership meant one person carrying one kind of strain while the other carried another. He carried the language, I carried the consequences. There was a Tuesday in my 8th month that I still think about. I was standing in the grocery store near the dairy section with a calculator open on my phone, deciding what to put back. That same night, Ethan posted a photo from a Manhattan steakhouse with 2 clients and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. I did not even fight with him when he got home. I just asked how the trip went. "Productive," he said. That was the whole answer. When I hit 36 weeks, my doctor told me to stop the audit shifts. My blood pressure was climbing. My feet were swollen. I said I would stop. Then I picked up one more shift because the electric bill had arrived and the number made me lightheaded. That was the life I thought I was protecting. A marriage under strain, a husband doing his best, a temporary squeeze we would laugh about later. Then my daughter came early. My labor started on a stormy Thursday and ended almost 20 hours later with a baby who entered the world furious, beautiful, and very much alive. I had never loved anything that quickly. I also remember staring at the optional postpartum upgrades on the hospital form and quietly declining every single one. "We just need to get through this quarter." That was Ethan's voice in my head. Then my grandmother walked into that room and shattered the quarter, the year, the entire lie. About 40 minutes after her call, Ethan and Vivian arrived. I knew the sound of his steps before I saw him. Confident, measured, almost cheerful. He was carrying flowers. Vivian had a pale blue gift bag and a coat over one arm. They entered smiling like people still in control of the scene. Then Ethan saw my grandmother. His smile did not disappear right away. It held one beat too long. Somehow, that was worse. Vivian recovered first. She always did. "Evelyn," she said lightly. "What a surprise." My grandmother ignored her and looked directly at Ethan. "Where is my granddaughter's money?" Ethan set the flowers on the windowsill. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't know which funds you're referring to." "Do not insult me and waste your own time in the same sentence," my grandmother said. Her voice stayed calm. "Every month since you married Naomi, $300,000 has gone into an account designated for household use, an account you manage. An account Naomi has apparently never been allowed to independently monitor. So I am asking you one time, where is it? Ethan finally looked at me. There was no guilt in his face, only calculation. He was already ranking exits. It's more complicated than that, he said. There were obligations, timing issues, reinvestment decisions. It was all for the household. I heard my own voice before I felt it. I was counting grocery money, I said. I was working nights with swollen feet because I thought we couldn't breathe. I turned down things I needed in this hospital because I thought we couldn't afford them. And you're standing here saying it was all for the household? Vivian stepped forward quickly, smoothing everything the way she always did. Naomi, sweetheart, you just had a baby. This is not the time to process financial complexity with a body full of hormones. My grandmother turned to her then. If your name appears anywhere on any of that money, she said, silence would be the wisest choice available to you. Vivian stopped moving. That was the moment I understood my grandmother suspected more than theft. She suspected participation. My lawyer is on her way, she said. Naomi and the baby are leaving with me tonight. That's not necessary, Ethan said. My grandmother looked back at him. Your opinion no longer has logistical value. I went home with her that night, not to the marble kitchen and the perfect pantry and the carefully arranged throw pillows Vivian liked to inspect. I went to my grandmother's house in Old Greenwich, where the floorboards creaked and the rooms smelled like cedar and tea, and a kind of safety I had not realized I was starving for. The next morning, Diane Roth arrived at 8:15. She was 62, sharp-eyed, immaculate, and built like a woman who had never once wasted a sentence. She washed her hands, glanced at my daughter, called her beautiful, sat down at the dining table, and said, "Start at the beginning and do not improve it." So I did. I told her how Ethan and I met, how the household account started, how my access narrowed, how the card had been declined, how the side job happened, how Vivian seemed to drift in on the same current of money I was never allowed to inspect. Diane interrupted only to lock down structure. Who proposed the account? Who controlled the login? When did notifications stop? Did Vivian ever use a secondary card? Was Ethan pursuing a raise, acquisition, or capital event? Then she opened a folder thick enough to stun a person. 30 monthly incoming transfers from Whitmore Family Holdings, she said, sliding the first sheet toward me. All on schedule, all deposited into the household account. I stared at date after date after date, still wanting some innocent explanation to appear. A decimal mistake, a frozen transfer, a bank error. Then Diane laid down the second sheet. Within 48 to 72 hours of each incoming transfer, significant amounts were routed out, first into Ethan Mercer's personal brokerage account, then into a Delaware management entity called Mercer Strategic Advisory. He is the sole controller. A map of betrayal is a disgusting thing. It has rhythm. Then came the third sheet. There is also a secondary benefit stream, she said. Vivian Mercer was an authorized user on a premium card paid from the brokerage side. Hotels, retail, jewelry, travel, spa charges, a consulting retainer that appears to be fictional. I looked up at her. She has not been standing near the theft, Diane said. She has been feeding from it. That sentence did something to me. Not because I had ever loved Vivian, I had not, but because I remembered every time she had looked me over and found me lacking while wearing something new I could not afford. Every time she had implied Ethan carried the real burden because I did not understand their world. They had me living on an allowance inside my own money, I said. Yes, Diane said. Then she pulled out one last document. This part I'd like you to read yourself. It was a transcript recovered from a cloud backup linked to a smart speaker in Vivian's kitchen. The account had once been synced through Ethan. The lines were clean, lawful, time-stamped. I read them once, then again. Vivian, she still thinks tight means temporary. Ethan, she trusts process if I say it calmly. Vivian, she'll ask you before she asks a bank. Ethan, that's why we keep her tired, not panicked, just tired. I stopped reading. That pain was not hot. It was cold, surgical, the kind that makes you sit very still, because if you move, you might come apart. They had not simply relied on my trust. They had managed it, budgeted it, used it like an asset. I let the evidence finish speaking. Diane filed that afternoon. Civil fraud, financial abuse, misappropriation, emergency preservation orders, discovery notices to every institution in the transfer chain. And because Ethan had signed an $11 million term sheet with a private capital group 2 weeks earlier, Diane also sent a concise factual notice to the parties performing diligence on him. My grandmother read the draft, crossed out one sentence using the word unfortunate, and said, "Nothing about this was unfortunate. It was engineered." So, Diane removed it. Ethan started calling before dinner. "Naomi, please pick up. This is getting distorted. Your grandmother doesn't understand how these structures work. I was protecting capital. I was trying to build for us." I did not answer. Then the texts started. "You are emotional. You are exhausted. You are jeopardizing Lila's future." That almost made me laugh. He had spent 2 years engineering exactly that condition and now wanted to use it as evidence against me. Within 3 days, the Capital Group paused its second close. Within 5, they requested expanded disclosures. Within a week, Ethan was calling from unfamiliar numbers because I had blocked the others. Then, he made the mistake that ended him. A week and a half after the filing, he attended a charity finance dinner in Manhattan and told people I had suffered a severe postpartum episode. He said my grandmother had manipulated me during a vulnerable period. He said I had taken his daughter and spiraled into paranoia over normal financial planning. He picked the wrong room. By the next morning, every word had made its way back to Diane. She added defamation before lunch. Then she sent the amended filing to the same people already reconsidering whether Ethan should ever be trusted with someone else's money. That was the real collapse. The term sheet died. Invitations stopped. Associates left. A co-investment withdrew. A lender reviewing a bridge facility requested additional fraud reps and then went silent. In Ethan's world, reputation was not morality. It was risk management. He had become risk. Vivian tried once. She arrived at my grandmother's gate in a cream coat and sunglasses with a face arranged into sorrow. My grandmother did not let her in. She stood on the front step while Vivian spoke about family, misunderstanding, stress, new motherhood, preserving dignity. My grandmother listened until Vivian said, "We all want what's best for the baby." Then she said, "If that were true, you would have left her mother enough money to buy groceries." That ended the conversation. By the time my daughter was 4 months old, the case had become a machine of deadlines, affidavits, disclosures, and consequences. By 6 months, Ethan was no longer fighting for innocence. He was fighting for reduction, less exposure, less language, less paper, less damage. He left me a voicemail one night saying he had made mistakes, that pressure had changed him, that he loved me, that none of it had come from malice. Even his remorse had structure. I saved the voicemail, not for me, for my daughter. If she ever asks me what kind of man her father was, I want her to hear him in his own voice, shaping truth into something flattering on the way out. When Lila was 7 months old, I moved into a small white house, 3 streets from my grandmother's place. It had a narrow porch, a stubborn front door, and morning light in the kitchen that made even cheap coffee feel ceremonial. I went back to work part-time for a medical nonprofit. I opened accounts in my own name. I watched every number myself. The first time I bought a good coat without asking permission from a voice in my own head, I cried in the parking lot. Then I laughed at myself for crying. One Saturday morning, my grandmother came over early. Lila was on a blanket in the living room making furious little sounds at the ceiling fan. We sat with coffee and watched her kick at a stuffed rabbit. After a while, my grandmother said, "I should have structured it differently." I knew what she meant. Protected trusts, separate control, hard walls. "You thought you were giving me a cushion," I said. She looked down at her cup. "I thought I was giving you freedom. What I gave the wrong man was access." Then she added, "I trusted your marriage because you did. Then I let that trust substitute for inspection. You paid for that. I am sorry." There are apologies that try to escape blame and apologies that tell the truth even when it does not help. Hers was the second kind. My throat tightened. I didn't see it either, I said. She nodded once. That is why it worked. I do not think about Ethan every day anymore. Healing did not arrive as forgiveness. It arrived as reduced frequency, then reduced intensity. Then one morning I realized an entire week had passed without hearing his voice in my head when I opened a bill. That felt bigger than revenge. The woman standing under fluorescent lights counting inventory at 8 months pregnant because she thought she had to save her marriage was not foolish. She was being managed by people who had studied exactly how far they could push her without triggering revolt. That distinction matters to me. Shame says I should have known. Truth says someone built the dark carefully around me. My grandmother was wrong about one thing and right about another. She was wrong to think money alone could protect me. She was right that one decisive phone call can save a life, because that is what she gave me in that hospital room. Not vengeance first, interruption. She stopped the machine while I still had enough of myself left to walk out. And when I think back to that doorway now, to my old sweatshirt, my daughter sleeping against my chest, the bill turned face down on the table, I do not remember the humiliation first. I remember the exact moment the lie ended. And that is lighter than people think.